Hey everybody, it's Jeff from Wccfech, and today we're going to be reviewing Dragon Quest Heroes, the latest installment in this particular franchise that happens to be known as the World Tree's Woe and the Blight Below. So let's get started, shall we? So for those of you that are actually unaware, Dragon Quest Heroes is a game where warriors from across the venerable Dragon Quest series, they sort of come together to fight against a new evil which has turned the world's friendly monster population into this unfriendly and evil monster population. So you choose from a fairly generic male or female hero, and then you set out with the intent of destroying the aforementioned evil. Honestly, of course, here, for whatever reason, when it comes to this plot, Dragon Quest Heroes is about as basic as it gets. But that's not usually what Dragon Quest Heroes is all about, fortunately. So luckily, where Dragon Quest Heroes shines is with a battle system that totally isn't the generic Warriors 2-button, mashathon that you're probably so accustomed to at this point. Instead of the you versus an army gameplay of other Warriors games, you are now given a genuine party that can switch between. And you've got genuine health bars that you'll be able to keep an eye on, and genuine magic meters to limit the usage of spells and whatnot. And yes, of course, there are spells, which is actually quite interesting, and genuine spells. Spells that are useful and not just these useless, afterthoughts and things like that. So talk about throwing Warriors, conventions out the window for the most part. Like, this is like a completely new concept, a new game here. It's fantastic. The aim of most of the levels here is to defend a character or a point on the map from monster hordes, of course, or just wipe out the monsters, clean off the map, as much as you can. The battling is mostly comprised of the same two buttons everyone has played a Warriors game with are familiar with button combos that you can use to create spells and special attacks that can also wipe out larger groups of enemies or weaker enemies with relative ease, and makes it a little bit more fun, in fact, and interactive. But that's not all, because they've also added a little bit of strategy to this game, and to do that, there's a nice monster summoning element that's been added, which allows you to collect monster coins during the game that you can either summon to fight by your side, or simply use as a one-time attack, so to speak. So when defending characters or points on the map, that means you can summon, say, a golem to stand guard, or to slow down enemy monsters by placing your own monsters on a narrow path ready to meet their blades. It's all kind of interesting the way you can do it. So this made certain situations much easier and a lot less stressful here, particularly missions where you're required to defend a point. But on the other hand, when you place a monster, you can't replace it elsewhere. It's sort of stuck where it's at, meaning that golem that was left, defending a now defunct point, has to be decommissioned from battle entirely so that you can summon that monster elsewhere. So, a minor gripe to be sure, but, this element of battle is probably one of the favorites that we have here. And things start to get really interesting when you start meeting boss creatures, such as dragons, where you're going to have to be a little bit more mindful about how you actually dodge and attack and go about your whole entire holistic strategy. Dragons are a great example, though, because you have to dodge fire breath while attacking the head and tail, and it's plenty of fun, actually. Whereas giants, whom you will likely be firing like spell cannons at and such, they're a lot less fun and feel more like a slog or the typical boss battle in probably a poorly made action game. Because it's not so much that you're attacking a threatening enemy, and more attacking a large health bar over and over and over and over again, repetitively, and it just takes so long to really destroy those types of enemies and those bosses, and it's just kind of boring. And to say that it gets repetitive in these situations is indeed a bit of an understatement. But what I really like about Dragon Quest Heroes is the ability to switch between genuinely interesting characters. Oddly enough, you wouldn't think it. I quickly found that the starting cast to be a bit boring to play as, but the story actually introduces you to brand new characters with much faster, more explosive ways to wipe through the enemies. It's fascinating. Now, with a lot of the past Dragon Quest series games, for the most part, they really are interesting and keep you engaged for only a few hours at a time. But here, you can actually be pleasantly surprised about how much variety there is. And very much unlike other Warriors games, there are elements that really showcase Dragon Quest JRPG origins here. All the characters have equipment to buy and upgrade, adding to their defense, magic, attack, and all that good stuff. And you can even create and equip accessories while in your main base using materials that you'll pick up whilst wiping out the waves and hordes of enemies that come your way. And oddly enough, what's probably most surprising about Dragon Quest Heroes is that the meld of JRPG elements and the Warriors-type gameplay actually works far better than you might expect. Sure, there are times in battle where it kind of feels, obvious that you're playing that Warriors 2-button mashing game, but when aboard the Stone Cloud, a massive airship that becomes your base of operations, the game suddenly has the unmistakable vibe of a Dragon Quest town or village. It's here where it becomes obvious that Dragon Quest hasn't just been slapped, into a Muso button mashing marathon. Instead, it has become its own unique game. It's really a shame then that the game isn't really all that amazing. Despite high production values, really lively graphics, and fun gameplay, Dragon Quest Heroes gets repetitive very, very quickly. Everything looks and feels silky smooth, of course, aside from that frame rate, we'll support this stone cloud, which is gorgeous, by the way. And yet, despite this, it's difficult to want to go back. There are quests left on the map, areas to explore, maps which open up to further areas, and yet you just don't want to have to go do them, because it's repetitive. I don't want to have to hunt down another group of slimes hidden in the tall grass or another armored monster with a big shield. But despite that feeling of repetition, it's also quite great with the feeling of progression that you get as well. Like each base you capture during each 20-minute stage feels like a big move towards your goal. And so despite how much you really do like the atmosphere. We really love the atmosphere of this game. The graphics, the beautiful music, even the characters, and the gameplay is just too simple and boring to really recommend Dragon Quest Heroes to anyone that wants a more substantial game.